listening to the Motherhood Experience, a podcast where you are part of the conversation with moms, for moms, and by moms. Let's jump into this episode with me, your host, Val Kleppen. Well, hello, and welcome back to the Motherhood Experience podcast. I'm Val, so thrilled to have you joining me today, where we are joined by Sara Barnes. Sara actually came up to me and said she should be asking me if she could be a guest on the podcast. And I said, of course. So we got that worked out. And I would just like to encourage you, if you're feeling the same way, if you're like, oh, I don't know, should I not? Take that step. Let's do an episode. I would love to have you reach out to me, info@themotherhoodexperience.com, and we will work something out. As always, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Those are always linked on the website and in the show notes. Sara is a local mom in the area where I am. We have known each other for about 4 years, just barely over 4 years. She has 2 adorable little girls. She and her husband live out in the country. They do beef cattle things. They do homestead things. They do homeschool things. And she gets to do it all on the property that her family kind of grew up on. Being like I think her dad grew up on the property where she and her family are growing up now. So that's a sweet turn of events there. We'll get to hear all about Sara's story, her bookkeeping adventure, and anytime you want to know more about the guests or how to contact them, all of that information is in the show notes when I have it. I happen to have all of that information for Sara. So please, wherever you are, if you want to save this episode, take a screenshot of it so you can be reminded when you're scrolling through photos to go back and look at it later. You can find the information for how to get in touch with Sara after the show. But for now, let's get right into it. Well, I would like to welcome Sara Barnes to the Motherhood Experience. Sara, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am so good. Thank you for asking. And you are a fan of the podcast. You have encouraged me many weeks a lot since listening to it. I think you were the one who had asked me about it, and my neighbor Olivia was right there, and I knew Olivia was a big fan. Am I remembering this right?
And I don't know. Keep telling the story.
I really tried to talk it down I don't know if it's any good. I don't know if it's worth listening to. And Olivia got really riled up and whipped around.
Because I think that was before I even knew you had started the podcast. And then I had to go back and binge listen to all of them to catch up.
Oh, goodness. Anyway, you've been very supportive since then. Also, thank you, Olivia, for encouraging Sara to listen. And so now here you are, kind of a full circle moment. So you know that we start every episode with ages and stages. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell the ages of your kids and stage of motherhood you're in?
Yeah. So my name is Sara Barnes, and I have 2 girls. Ages, Tegan is 7 and Tally is 4. And they're both redheads. And so we get a lot of comments about that because redheads, I don't know. In my family, redheads are there's so many of them, but to most people, redheads are really rare. So we get lots of comments about that when we go out. And they're both very artsy and very adorable. And sometimes they're too cute for my own good, especially Tally.
Yeah. We often say that they're the cutest kids in the universe. They're pretty dang cute, I will say.
They are pretty cute. And as far as stage of motherhood, we just got out of the potty training stage for Tally. So thank God for that. That was Tegan was potty trained before she was 3, and Tally was after she was 4, before she finally, she acted like she wanted to for the longest time. But anyway, so we're happy to be out of that stage and starting into the homeschooling stage. And so we're excited about all the changes. I feel like every stage has its own unique challenges and its own unique joys.
That's so true.
I hope that continues through all the stages.
It will.
Or at least the joys.
Well, I can't promise that.
Oh, thanks.
I do want to ask though, so they're both of their names start with T. All three of my kids' names start with H because I'm like OCD, very particular. Also, my sister and my names both start with V. We've talked about this on the podcast before. Is that something that you wanted both of them to start with the same letter? Did you name Tegan first, and then when you got pregnant with Tally, you were like, well, this one has to be a T also? How did that work out?
Jake had the name Tegan picked out before I even met him, and it was just a name that he really liked. That's my husband, for anyone who doesn't know. So he had that name picked out that he really liked and told it to me, and I was like, sure, I like the name Tegan. And I just kind of looked it up just to make sure. I don't hold a ton of stock exactly in the like meaning of names, but I just want to make sure it didn't mean anything that I was like against. And I don't hers means something like beautiful or something like that. I don't even remember. That's how much stock I hold in that. But then when Tally came along, we were hoping for a boy just because I always wanted a girl and a boy. And then when we went in and we found out that Tally was a girl, I was actually okay with that because I was like, well, we have all the clothes we'll need and everything. And then Jake was like, okay, we need another T name because we had a name picked out for a boy. It did not start with T, actually, but he was like, we need another T name if we're going to have a girl because what happens when you put two girls together? They make dynamite. So it was like TNT, dynamite. And I was like, oh my goodness. So then we just started looking. Yeah. Then we just started looking through all the like different options for T names. And we kind of dismissed Tally at first, but then we just kept coming back to it and really liked it. And in the end, we can go into that story later if you want, but in the end, like her name became very meaningful for us. So
Okay, I want to circle back on something. First of all, Jake with the jokes, even oh, that man.
hey, he was serious enough that he got a shirt made that on the front pocket it has like a stick of dynamite and it says TNT above it, and on the back it has this like explosion, and in the middle it just says boom. And so he picked out like a pink heather shirt because we were having two girls and got that shirt specifically made because
Wow.
you know my husband.
He's a creative one, that guy. You said that Jake had the name Tegan picked out way before he even met you. So obviously, children were part of his vision for his future. What was your stance on becoming a mother? What were your thoughts about it?
Oh, well, when I was growing up, I wasn't one of those kids that like babysat or anything, and kids were really not my thing. Jake is a kid magnet, and I guess I never really thought that I would never have children or anything. I just didn't enjoy like watching other people's kids and being around. Like even now, like I can watch my niece and my nephew, but I'd rather not. I mean, I'll do it, but I love my kids, and being around I shouldn't say being around other people's kids, but like watching other people's kids. I would never do a daycare or something like that, but I definitely didn't discount the idea of having kids, but it wasn't like I don't know. I would say when I was in high school, I probably would have said it wouldn't have made me sad if I never had kids. But then once I was married, that's when like the switch flipped almost, because we decided we wanted to be in our own house before we had kids. And then my middle sister got pregnant before I did the first time, and we still weren't in our own house. And like I got really sad about that. Like I was okay with the idea, like we were living with my parents, and so we were like we want to wait till we're in our own house before we have kids, and I was okay with that. But at the same time, I was like, why is this taking so long?
When you were pregnant with Tegan, what was that pregnancy like? Was it smooth sailing? All expectations met? Did you get sick? What was your pregnancy with her like?
I loved being pregnant with Tegan. I had what the doctors called like the textbook picture perfect pregnancy. I maybe a couple of times had just a little bit of nauseousness, and I just like ate a cracker and was fine. But for the most part, I just felt amazing when I was pregnant. I will also say it took us a year and a half to get pregnant the first time. And so I think part of that could be like, well, obviously you can't control your body function by that, but I'm sure part of it was I was just so excited to be pregnant and that it was actually happening. And but yeah, I was not sick or anything through my pregnancy. It was fantastic up until the point that my water broke a month early.
A month early. Okay,
Mhm.
so were you at home when it happened?
um well, we had just gotten done preg checking heifers and hauling the ones that were pregnant up to the pasture. And I remember sitting in the pickup, going across the pasture on the way back home, and how rough it was. And we drove 10 miles back to my parents' house, and my dad was backing the trailer up to park it. And I went to jump out to tell him when to stop so he didn't hit the fence. And all of a sudden, it was like, I peed my pants. And then I was like, oh, I gotta pee really bad. And then I was like, this is not me having to pee really bad. And so I was sure that my water had broke, and it had. We called the hospital, and I mean, I wasn't overly too concerned about it. Like, we live about an hour from town, and when we called the hospital and told them what we thought was going on, it was like right at noon. And I was like, well, can we eat before we come in? So like we got to the hospital at like 2, and I my mom was freaking out, but I was fine.
That's what,
And
because this
Jake
is
was
like
fine. Yeah, it was
you,
first, right? And Jake was fine. So like he was working another hour away from town, like an hour away from town, but in a different direction. And he called the guy, his boss, and was like, I could use some prayer. He was like, asked him a question about something, and then the boss is like, well, anything else? He's like, yeah, I could use some prayer. It sounds like Sarah's in labor. And he's like, what? What are you still doing there? Like, pack everything up and go. Get to the hospital with your wife. And he's like, it's okay. We got some time, I'm sure. Like, it was crazy how calm we were both about it.
so was she small because she was a month early?
Well, she was 5 pounds 9 ounces. However, Jake was born past his due date, and he was only 5 pounds 2 ounces. So he was a small baby himself. And and I was only 6 pounds 12 ounces. And when Tally was born, she was 6 pounds 13 ounces, and she was 2 days past her due date. So we're just small people,
Wow, I
for one thing.
guess.
But with Tegan, they were concerned. My water had broke, but I wasn't having contractions. I mean, I was. When they hooked me up to the monitor, I was having contractions, but I couldn't feel them. And so they had asked, like, before we try to get things moving, do you want to transfer to Sioux Falls where they have a neonatal unit just in case her lungs aren't developed enough and she needs to go to the NICU? And, we prayed about it and decided to stay where we were. And when she was born, she was fine. She was a little bit blue, and they just kind of rubbed her, and Jake said she pinked right up, and she did good. She did have some jaundice and spent some time under the Billy lights, but she was good.
How long before you were able to come home with her?
She was born on a Friday, and we came home on Monday, I do believe. But then
Fantastic.
we took a Billy blanket home with us, and she was on the Billy blanket for a while and had to go in to torture my child with pinpricks in her heel to test her bilirubin and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Mm-hmm.
terrible. That was hard.
So I met you when you were pregnant with Tally, very pregnant with Tally. I think I met
Yeah,
you
very pregnant.
in like September, and she was born in November. So how was her pregnancy different from Tegan's, or was it?
It was different. For one thing, it was during the whole COVID thing, right? And so I think I did have more nauseousness in the mornings, and I just discovered, like, I played around and figured out that I had to have protein right away in the morning, otherwise I felt sick to my stomach. But it was still mild compared to what I hear so many people talk about. We had a close brush with like UTIs with her and stuff, but I was co-doctoring with my OB and a midwife during that one, and we handled it with just some natural supplements and things, and we're able to. I was downing garlic for a little while there, just trying to avoid taking antibiotics of any type, but it worked out really well. I brought up the COVID thing because we live 10 miles from my parents, and we raise beef cattle together. And it was during the calving season of March, April, May. With COVID, my sister's son couldn't go to daycare anymore. And so, but she was still going to work. And so I moved in with my parents because that's where they were living. I moved in with our parents during the week, basically, and watched her son and, of course, Tegan. I had Tegan with me, and then was helping to cook and do whatever needed to be done in the house and outside the house whenever I needed to, like go help with the cattle. But so there was a little bit more stress, I feel like, during that pregnancy, just because Jake would come home to our house at night, and so we would only see him on the weekends, and so that was kind of a little bit more stressful for me, just not being at home in my own bed with my husband. And there was all that uncertainty of what was going on in the world at that point. But yeah, I really loved doctoring with my midwife and having her come to me at the house. I didn't have to go into the hospital very often, and so that was really good. And then we ended up having a home birth with her, and that was amazing. So with Tegan, because I wasn't having contractions, they gave us some time to try to figure things out, but then they ended up hooking me up to Pitocin. Somebody else on your podcast at one point said Pitocin is, what is it? I forget what the line was, but I was like, yes. It's like
I think she said the devil's medicine.
Yes, the devil's medicine. Pitocin is the devil's medicine. I totally agree with that 100%. They eventually had to back me off because I was having like triple back-to-back contractions, and I was having back labor because she was sunny side up. And with Tally, completely natural birth, and it was so much more peaceful and less chaotic. And of course, we were at home, and it was a much better experience than the first time around. And then with her, when she came out, her umbilical cord detached from the placenta, and my midwife was like, what just happened? But yeah, her cord detached from the placenta, and so we had to we had a water birth, and so we got out of the pool real quick, and we're just trying to check things over and everything, and they were concerned about maybe having to transfer us to the hospital for a retained placenta, but eventually we got that taken care of and everything was good. But she was, a little bit low on iron because the blood loss a little bit, but there again, she turned out to be wonderful. My midwife had asked me, like, did you have COVID at all while you were pregnant? And I was like, I have no idea, because apparently my placenta looked like hamburger. And yeah, it's like, I've seen, if anyone has seen a beautiful placenta, like, it looks like a tree. It's beautiful. But this one looked like mushed meat. I mean, literally, my midwife said, I don't know how you have a baby that's alive, let alone one that is happy, healthy, and chubby, because she had rolls. And the water sac that surrounded her was also like so thin, you could just poke your fingers through it. And she was such an active baby. I don't know how she didn't poke a foot or a hand or something through it while she was inside of me. But then that's when later on I got to really reflecting on the whole birth event and everything. And I looked up her name again, the meaning of it. And the meaning of her name is God's dew, like DEW, dew on the grass. And immediately then, when I had heard it the first time, it didn't really mean anything to me. But immediately then, I thought of manna from the Bible. And I was like, how God provided this thing that was this supernatural thing that could only happen because of him. And here was Tally, who we had been calling her by name when we weren't around Tegan because we weren't telling anybody else the name, but we had been calling her by name through the whole thing and basically like speaking this over her. And it's just amazing to me to think back that just by her name, we were like calling out this protection over her during this time, not knowing that there were things going on that were not normal. Otherwise, my pregnancy wasn't too bad with her, other than I went a month longer than with Tegan, so I felt like a beached whale at the end.
Oh, I'm not pregnant, and I feel like that some days. So maybe that's just the thing. Just thought I'd throw that in there. I want to ask you though, Sarah, what led you to opt for a midwife?
I think there were a lot of factors. I think I had spent a lot of time, even I'm a researcher. And when I was pregnant with Tegan, I was listening to podcasts and doing all these different readings and just trying to figure out like what I would want my birth plan to be like and all these different things, trying to figure out like all the different things that could happen, to know what to expect and all the different options that are out there. And I would really encourage anyone who is pregnant, especially first time mom, but even if you're not a first time mom, like look into what all the options are, because it's not always just exactly like everyone is different. You don't have to do it the same as everyone else. You have so many options, and advocate for yourself and what you want to happen. And like even in the hospital that can happen. Sometimes things happen and you don't get the birth story that you want, but there are multiple ways of doing things. And so when I was doing all of that research and then afterwards just like thinking about everything that had happened with Tegan and the birth there, and then learning more about the option of having a midwife and what that looks like to have a home birth. And it just felt like the right thing to do for us. And I'm actually thankful for the COVID thing happening at the same time, because I think at first that's the only reason that my husband agreed to the idea. Um, but then as time went on and he learned more about it and everything, it changed his mind. Like he would have said yes anyway, but that was like what prompted his initial being okay with the idea until he learned more about it. But yeah, it was just learning about the fact that our bodies are made for birth. Like God made our bodies to carry a child and to give birth. And so many times in the medical field, they kind of treat pregnancy more like a problem than something your body was made to do. And I wanted to be surrounded by people that were not looking at my baby and my pregnancy and in that light. I wanted to be surrounded by people that felt like they were supporting me well. I'm not against the medical community. Don't take that wrong. Like the nurses and everything and the doctors are great. But it's not the same. And then at home, you're in your natural environment. You're not subjecting the baby to whatever germs are coming into the hospital from the thousands of people that come in or whatever. And at home, you're in your home environment, in germs that your baby is already used to from the last 9 months of being in your womb. And so it was just nice to know that we could have a more peaceful experience and have a little more control over what that looked like than we did in the hospital.
So when you and Jake got married, you were pregnant with Tegan. What were you doing? Like, what were your goals and aspirations for yourself at that time?
Before I was pregnant with Tegan?
Well, or like right around the time that you got pregnant, like did motherhood change the trajectory you thought you were going to take?
Motherhood changed everything. Part of it was motherhood, and part of it was loss. So Jake and I were married for 6 years before Tegan was born, or before I was pregnant. I forget which one it was. 6 years before Tegan was born. And up until becoming a mom, I was really big into horses and trying to do things with horses. And my horse that I had since she was 14 at the time. So the horse I had had for like 14 years, she got really sick and passed away. And that was in August before I got pregnant with Tegan. And I was like devastated, and it changed a lot of things for me. I didn't realize it until later that I think I was still like grieving the loss of that. Her and I were very close. I always call her my soul horse. And I learned a lot of things from her. And like, I found that being around horses, God really speaks to me. In working with horses, he speaks to me on things that I need to work on too. So when I lost that connection with her, I think what I did is when I got pregnant with Tegan, I just kind of threw myself into learning everything I could about becoming a mom and everything, not realizing that I was still grieving the loss of something that I hadn't actually fully processed through. And then after Tegan was born, looking back now, I believe that I went through like postpartum depression. And of course, she was born in September, so we were going into winter, and in South Dakota, winter sucks. We all miss the sunshine. It's only January, and it won't be back till till like March or April, and we're already sick of it, right? But yeah, I know it's how we look at it, perspective.
You have to
But
remember, I come from Minnesota. South Dakota is not so bad.
really,
Girl.
okay, well, I've lived here my whole life, so I don't know. But either way, prior to being pregnant with Tegan, or even while I was pregnant with Tegan, I was doing some carpentry things with my husband on the job site with him. He had started his own construction business for a while. And then after Tegan was born, like I couldn't take her on the job site, and we were exclusively breastfeeding. So like what I was doing kind of stopped. And I started looking into ways to maybe try to help supplement some income from home. And so I started doing Pampered Chef, and that didn't ever go well for me. It was where I needed to be at the time to help like gain some self-confidence and to learn some things about myself and to grow in that way. And becoming a mom changed everything. I had a time there, went through a long span of time there where I just like didn't even know who I was anymore. Like, who is this woman? I don't know who I am or what I want or where to go from here. I'm just like living day to day and not even realizing for a long time that I was in such a low place. And then about the time I started to feel better, then I got pregnant with Tally again. Tally. So then like the whole cycle kind of started over. It actually wasn't as bad the second time around, but it still wasn't until after Tally was born that I really started to realize what I had been going through and all like the emotional struggles and ups and downs that I had gone through during all of that. And I mean, it put a strain on our marriage, and we've been working hard the last few years to build back our marriage to a better place. And I've been working hard the last few years to just discover who I am again, and you know, who I am as a mom, and how I can get back to the passions that I love, and what other things that I actually like to do that can help our family. And so it's been a journey. It's been quite the journey, and God's been peeling away layers like an onion and healing me one layer at a time.
We've talked about how your girls are the cutest kids in the universe. They're just so sweet and so positive. Like they just want to enjoy everything.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that they've done or said that you still remember, and just every time you think of it, it just makes you laugh or smile or fills your heart with joy?
Why do you have to ask such tough questions, Val?
I don't know. Sorry, it's my job.
Tegan, so many times, like she is a very much of an encourager. She will come up to me and she'll say, "Mom, thank you for being such a good mom," or "You're the best mom in the world, the best mom I could ever have," or something along those lines. I mean, when she prays, oh my goodness. When she prays at night before we go to bed, some of the things that she says in prayer, I'm like, you have a special connection to God that I don't have. But she'll even pray, you know, like, "Thank you, God, for letting my mom be my mom and my dad be my dad." And she just amazes me all the time with how she can be so encouraging. And there was a time when I heard a lot from her of, I can't do this. And that was like a mirror to myself, I realized, because it was like, she's learning that because I'm saying that. And
Mm.
I was like, I don't want you to go down the same path that I went down of, being unsure of yourself and not having confidence. And so I started like really trying to fix that in myself and really nipping that in the butt for her so that she didn't, and teaching her to be encouraging instead. And I mean, I don't think I really had to teach her to be encouraging all that much. I just had to teach her to say, I was just teaching her when she would say, I can't do that. I'm like, yes, you can. Like, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. And, or maybe you don't know how to do it yet, but you will. And it was like, I was training her at the same time that I was like training myself. And it's definitely paid off because now she does it all on her own. Her and Tally will be sitting there. Just the other day, they were sitting there doing a worksheet activity where they had to find all the letter H's in this sentence. And Tally went through and was looking for them all. And Tegan checked her work and she was like, good job, you found them all. And she's just, Tally's drawing pictures or coloring something, and Tegan will go, oh, I'm so proud of how good you did on that. And she's definitely amazing and an encourager, and she inspires me to do better too.
I know one of my kids' favorite Tegan stories. They still talk about it. I can't remember when it happened, but let's just say it was a while ago. I don't know what was happening, but we were together, I guess. And Tegan had made up a game and was trying to explain it to the kids. And when she got to the rules of how to play it, she just goes, and if you play it right the first time, you'll play it right every time. It's so dang cute. And so sometimes when we don't understand things at home, we just say, if you do it right the first time, then you'll do it right every time.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, goodness.
And Tally has really come into herself too. She used to be like so clingy. It was either you or your mom, like nobody else.
And now
like,
she just wants dad all the time. And I'm like, what happened to me?
well, on Sunday she came up to me and she started a tickle war.
Oh.
Like, yeah, that doesn't happen. And I thought like she ran away and I was like, oh, okay, we're done. No, she came back. she ran away to like catch her breath, and then she came back. She was ready for a sneak attack. So she's really come into herself over the years.
Yeah, and she really loves to tease and try to do jokes. Like, she's been doing that a lot with her dad lately. She's like, Dad, I've got a joke for you. And they're like not funny at all. They don't even make sense, but she's just entranced.
I'm sorry, some of Jake's jokes don't even make sense.
Well, like father, like daughter.
I mean, I see where she gets it.
Oh, yeah. But she's just the most adorable little thing. Lately, she's always saying, bye! Like, where did you start doing that? Like, that's like a new thing that's been happening, but it's so adorable. And just would get to go somewhere and like, bye!
So you talked about finding yourself, not knowing who you were, getting back into things that you love doing and wanted to do. What did you find?
So I actually discovered one of the things that I have always loved is solving puzzles. I love doing Sudoku puzzles. I love doing like physical, like picture puzzles, put them together, all kinds of puzzles. And I like making sure certain things like numbers are in order. And one day I came across a thing on Facebook about being a bookkeeper. And I was like, that's interesting. And so I did a little research because that's what I do. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this sounds like something that I could definitely do. And I had already been doing like bookkeeping for my husband's carpentry business when he had that, and for the ranch, our part of the ranch side of the cattle. And so it wasn't a foreign concept to me. And actually, for me, it was funny because I kind of pushed back against it a little bit, but then I had somebody that told me, when you know the thing that you need to do, it's when it's something that seems so easy and like a no-brainer to you, but other people find it difficult. And so I was a little skeptical at first, because I was like, they keep saying everybody needs a bookkeeper and businesses all need these bookkeepers, and business owners don't know, a lot of business owners don't really know how to do their books. And I was just like, but it's so easy. Am I missing something? Like, so I actually had to talk to someone and say, this is what I understand about what it takes to be a bookkeeper. Am I missing something? Because this seems like a no-brainer, like anybody could do it. And they're like, nope, you got it. And that's when I realized, that's when it clicked for me, that this thing is something that seems easy to me, but doesn't seem easy to a lot of people. And so it's something that I could actually enjoy doing. And so that's what I've been doing for I'm coming up on my 3rd year. Like in February will be the end of my 2nd year of having my own bookkeeping business and servicing clients. And so I have been really enjoying that. And it's given me something to do that feels like my own, that's not being a mom. And, I love being at home with my girls and being around them all the time. But at the same time, I felt like I needed another purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Just that, something that was not all about them, and also something that could help bring some income in for our family and help with the strain on that. And so that my husband doesn't have to work so much and can be home with us more. And so it's been really good. I'm really enjoying it. I love digging into client books and figuring out where all the issues are, and like putting the puzzle together of all the pieces that are missing or in the wrong places, and getting it all organized and making everything be just right, so that come tax time, the accountants have an easy job putting it all together for taxes. And so it's been really good. I didn't know how much I would like it in the beginning. I figured I probably would, but I enjoy it way more than I anticipated that I would. And it doesn't take away from, like, I still love being out with my animals, and I still want to get horses again someday because I don't have any. And I still I want to get a milk cow, and I like my dog, and I want to be outside doing things. But having my bookkeeping business and being able to do that from home allows us that opportunity to be able to grow something that can give us the ability, financial ability, to do a lot of the other things that we want to do down the road.
Mm. I love that sense of achievement and accomplishment too, that just comes naturally in that sense for you. Because yeah, when I was a virtual assistant and had multiple clients, when they would do the onboarding interview, or before onboarding, when they would do the interview, and I, whether they asked or not, I made sure to tell them, I will not book your travel. Actually, I wouldn't say I will not. I would say I prefer if you book your own travel, and I will not do your bookkeeping. So yeah,
Well, it's been a
I'm
growing
not as
experience. Like, even within the bookkeeping, there's multiple different, you can do accounts receivable and accounts payable and payroll and sales tax and all those things, as well as just the basic bookkeeping. And I had to kind of learn through time, like, which pieces that I actually enjoy the most and which pieces I like definitely don't want to do.
yeah.
But, and it's good. It's a lot easier once you figure out what you like to do and what you don't like to do, so you can just take on more of what you like to do and be happy with it.
So how do you juggle it with building a bookkeeping business and mothering 2 adorable daughters?
Oh, sometimes I feel like I do not juggle it well. I'm a work in progress. That's how I juggle it. Sometimes my house is an utter disaster, and sometimes We are catching up on homeschool days because, or just taking a week off because like this time is tax season, and so in January here I've got a lot to get done for 1099s and everything, and then Tegan was sick today, and so we just skipped it. Like we're not even, which they're young, it doesn't matter so much, but I do the best that I can. And I have to give myself grace sometimes because sometimes I feel like I have to do it all perfectly all the time, and that's an unrealistic expectation. And so I try to have set times that I sit down and work on my business during the week, and sometimes I have to be flexible in that. And my girls are getting old enough now where they can kind of entertain themselves while I'm busy, or I can get them started with some of their homeschool lessons and then they can work on their worksheets afterwards by themselves. Or Tegan now is unloading the dishwasher, putting her own laundry away. So like I can give them a task of some things to do to occupy them while I'm working so they're not bothering me every 10 minutes. And so that's definitely making things easier. But the big thing is just trying to be organized with the tasks that I need to get done. I'm not the best at it as far as, especially when it comes to household things. I'm better at it with my business. But I'm not as good about it when it comes to house things. And so I'm constantly feeling like I'm behind on laundry and cleaning and dishes and all those things. But I feel like the important parts are the girls and the things that I'm teaching them and making sure that they're learning about God and learning all the important stepping stones to the things that they need to know for life. And then my business and of course my husband, but he's gone most of the time, so it's just the girls and I at home during the week. And well, with my business I have like, I started setting up SOPs to make sure that I'm on track with everybody's individual bookkeeping needs. And then with home, I've been using ClickUp for a while as like a task management system, even for like house things. My big goal this year is to track my tracking, which sounds really weird, but like I discovered that I will set up within ClickUp, I'll set up like I'm gonna, like I have a laundry loop, right? And so like I have a loop of like I'm gonna do the towels, I'm gonna do the kitchen towels, I'm gonna do the bedding, I'm gonna do these certain things. And the girls' bed, like laundry, I wash on a certain day. And so like I set that all up in ClickUp to track it and to know, what I'm needing to do next. But then I always forget to go in and look at it and mark it off. And so my big goal this year is to track whether or not I have tracked the plan that I actually set up and whether or not I'm actually, trying to implement that plan, because the plan's no good if I don't actually do it. Like I can set up all the most beautiful plans in the world, but if I don't actually work the plan, then it doesn't work so well. So I'm trying to do better about that this year, just to try to stay a little more organized. And I wanted to get a bunch of freezer meals in the freezer last fall before we got into tax season, but that didn't really happen. So that's the goal, is to try again this year. And I feel like I get these plans and these ideas, and sometimes they go well and sometimes they don't. And then I just try again next time. And every time it just gets a little better.
You have mentioned that your bookkeeping business you do from home. Does that mean you can serve clients anywhere? Do you stick to regionally? How does that work?
I can serve clients anywhere in the United States, is what I don't do overseas clients. I just do within the US.
Right. In the digital age, they can send anything you need. You don't have to meet up in person at,
Yeah.
you know,
I have a few
over
local
donuts and
clients
coffee.
that yeah. I have a few local clients that I have met with in person on occasion, but for the most part, my clients are all virtual. I implemented a client portal this last fall So I've kind of consolidated all of my information into one area, and it's made it nicer for my clients and myself to be able to keep all of our information organized so that nothing falls through the cracks, and our communication is more streamlined that way. And so it's easy to bring anybody on from all across the country.
I'm going to point out an observation that I have just had in this conversation. You can tell me if you don't want me to keep it in the podcast. But when you talk about bookkeeping, you talk about it in a very knowledgeable, methodical, confident, straightforward manner. And it's just like, man, you are just like on it. And when we talk about life things, it's just kind of like whimsical and, I can't even think of the words right now because it's late at night. Like, it's just like, we take it as it comes and we roll with the punches and flexible. And it's just like, it's a totally different, man, you are like, I love it.
Okay, I was like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? That you're
I know. I had to get there because you're like, okay, but what does that mean? No, I love it.
What do you think that means?
Let me tell you, I'm glad you asked. I think that it really shows you're in your vein, first of all, that,
that's good.
Pampered Chef wasn't it, right? No. And now that you're doing this and you're excited about it and you're dialed in, I feel like, and I mean, you should be flexible and kind of whimsical, especially with girls your age, and just kind of taking life as it comes and, dealing with it when you get to it. So I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm saying that hearing you talk about motherhood and everything, like, it's fun and you've shared your stories and like, oh, we were in the trenches with you and now we're up here with you. But hearing you talk about bookkeeping, that's not my thing. And so hearing you talk about it, I'd be like, yeah, sounds like she knows her stuff.
Well, good. I'm glad.
That's all I wanted to say. But there is a stark
difference. I like
difference.
The observation, though.
Okay.
I hadn't thought about it.
I'm leaving it in.
But yeah, I do like the observation.
So let me ask you this. Are you done having kids?
Yes. If I have my way about it, yes. The only way I'm having more kids is if God just makes it happen, but I'm doing everything in my power to make sure it doesn't happen.
What's the reason for it? I mean, when you are capable of producing the most adorable kids in the universe.
My husband says the same thing, and I said they just keep getting cuter. We can't do that. Like, yeah, Jake has said the same thing. Like, everybody says we make adorable kids. We should just make some more. I'm like, and he's literally, for the most part, he's joking, because we've already talked about this. Like, what I went through becoming a mother and going through all the hormonal things and depression and loss of myself and all of that, I don't want to go back to that. And I've got two beautiful girls, and I feel like that's what I can handle. I mean, between them and the business, and not only that, but like, we plan on me growing my business in such a way that Jake can be home more. And if we throw a baby into the mix of that, well, now that just makes that 10 times harder. And Jake's looking forward to slowing down because he has a very physically demanding job. His body is definitely feeling the strain of like 30 years of carpentry work. So he loves what he does, but he just wants to do more of it at home and on not such a demanding schedule.
So back to the bookkeeping then, if people want to find you or look you up and see what you're all about, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I have a Facebook page, we're on LinkedIn, and we are just starting an Instagram page. So starting up in February, we'll be on Instagram as well.
All right, so we'll have all of those linked in the show notes then, and people can find you that way. And thank you for making the time to come and share. And we didn't even cry a single time.
I know. I got my box of Kleenexes just in case. Because I anticipated. Apparently, I've talked about my like up and down story so many times that it doesn't hit me quite so much anymore. Of course, we didn't get into all the nitty-gritty details, but yeah.
Stay tuned for part 2, everybody.
Well, thank you
All
for
right,
having
Sarah,
me.
thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for coming on the Motherhood Experience. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. To join our exclusive TME community, head over to themotherhoodexperience.com/learn more. Be sure to follow the Motherhood Experience on Instagram, and please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment below, and we'll catch you next time.